And I'm going to start with Anne because she knows that I know the story and I love it and I always make her tell the story. The shakedown, Anne. The shakedown.
Right. I knew that I was a storyteller, not necessarily a writer, when I was about 5. I started school when I was 4 and a half, and I used to walk to school and back by myself through wartime London because it was okay to do that. And I'd been given sixpence to pay for something in the middle of the day at school. And for some reason or another, I still had my sixpence. And I was nice looking when I was a little one with golden curly hair and blue eyes and kind of skin that children had. And I was dressed in a pink dress with smocking on that my mother had done here, little Mary Jane shoes. And this big boy of about 12 followed me. He had a stick, and he said he would take my money. And I spun him this long story about how we were so poor, we had no clothes, we had no shoes, we had no food. Ridiculous, I don't know where I got it from. Obviously not true. And he gave me half a crown. Which is 5 times sixpence. So I returned home with 3 shillings. And it served me right, because I didn't earn any money storytelling. I was nearly 40 after that.
Well, I'm a storyteller, and I've had 8 books published. I don't think you know that, but I have. But they've all been intermittent and all about my life. The first one was, as you said, How to Be a Party Girl. And it's still a bestseller on Amazon, which is amazing after all these years. But I never was a queen of anything. You know, queens lose their heads very quickly. And I've always been able to keep my head about me. And even though I've had a lot of stresses, but I've made it all into stories. And so, as you mentioned, my book, Oh, the Hell of It All, became Whispers from God, which I think is a great trajectory, since, from hell to heaven. But that was not a response to my son's book at all. I'd already written it before my son wrote his Oh, the Glory of It All, which was a major bestseller, and he's a fabulous writer. But I have found my own life to be so rich with events, from the first person in the world to have heart surgery and live, to growing up the way I did, as I described in that little piece on Being a Lot Goals. Poor, on welfare as a child, hungry at times. I'm so glad I had that experience. It was wonderful. And I've been able to write about it with an authentic voice. And so my life has been my story. Our story, isn't it? What else do we have?
Well, I didn't realize that I was a storyteller, but what I was an extraordinary liar as a child. And my mother went to a teacher conference. I think I was in the 2nd grade, and the teacher said to her, "You look wonderful. I'm considering." And my mother said, "Considering what?" She said, "All those children." She said, "No, I just have Vicky and her older sister Michelle." "Really? According to Vicky, you have like 11 children." So my mother came home and said, "What is this about 11 children?" And I didn't know. Thank you very much.
When I was 6 years old, I wrote a story about a butterfly who flew too close to the sun. And I was just thinking, I don't know exactly, I think it melted. But, and I always thought, well, I just wrote stories. And I thought then, as many kids do, that everybody writes stories. And then years went by, and I kept writing stories, and then I realized how really hard it was to write stories by the time I was a teenager. And then, so I became an actress, which was actually a lot easier than writing stories. Yeah. But when my father died, I found that story about the butterfly and the sun in his files. He had kept it all those years.
I never really considered myself a writer. Unlike everybody here, I've only got one novel and then some children's stories, and I find writing so incredibly difficult. It's like a tightrope, and I'm always feeling that I'm going to fall off on one side. But Barbara became an actress because she said it was easier than writing, and I became an editor because it's a hell of a lot easier. And so I didn't write anything except I did write some academic things because I was a teacher. And then this force of nature came along, Victoria, and she said, you've got to write for this anthology. The only time I ever write now is when Victoria nags me to do an essay for her anthologies. And so far she's had what? I call her the queen of anthologies. Now she's sold another one. She's the empress of anthologies.
Yes, but you have to understand that the anthologies are also considered the bastard child of literature, so there you have it. I have wonderful questions here, and we could actually go for hours with these questions. We won't, don't panic. But I've never seen so many good questions at one of the events. So everybody has questions asked specifically to them.
We'll keep the
gosh.
answers brief.
Pardon?
We'll keep the answers brief.
Yeah, keep the answers, please, please, brief answers. Let's start with this one. They're all writers' questions. So that is really amazing for me. I love that. And we all have such different areas of writing. So what are your writing habits and disciplines? Do you write a certain time of the day, amount of time, or is it just when you're inspired? So, yeah, right. Short and sweet.
Oh, if you write when you're inspired, you might write one very short poem, and that's the end of your whole career. I'm sorry. I have no patience with waiting for the muse and all of that. You know, it's a job. Once in a while, when you get writing, when you are at work, and then some inspiration comes, but. If anybody wants advice, it's do not wait for inspiration. I'm sorry to be a doubter.
Did you want to answer that?
I was going to say, I found an even easier way. I married a writer, my first husband, and then I married another writer, my second husband, and they did it for me until Victoria.
And you have a son who's a
And I have a
writer.
son who's a writer, so I've got 3 of them who've done it for me.
Do you want to answer this?
My first book was, as I said, How to Be a Party Girl. I'd never written anything. I got help from anybody who wrote anything. If they had written a recipe, I would say, please help me with my book. And they were glad to help. And eventually I got my book together. Now I really work at the computer. I was 65 when I learned to use a computer. I'd never typed. And I learned. And now I find that I have to give in to my back hurting once in a while to get up from the chair. Yeah, but I get so involved in my writing. I really like the story. And with being around calls, I loved writing about my childhood. So I get inspired.
Well, I make my living at this, so I have to meet my deadlines. And at the last few years, I've done 2 full-length novels and a Christmas novella each year. So normally I start between 8:30 and 9 in the morning. I stop for lunch, I stop for an evening break. I mean, like for 30 minutes. And I usually finish between 5:30, 6, 7 in the evening, 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year. But that does take in also touring, fun things like this, which are the rewards you get every so often. But this is what I do. So like anybody else, I do a more or less 9 to 5, 6 days a week, but I don't do holidays. And I'm having fun. I'm being paid to do what I want to do anyway. But I do discipline myself, and like Barbara, I think you don't wait for the muse. The muse will come when you take the, I write with a pen. When you get the piece of paper and you start, he walked into the room and, oh yes, and so and so and so. But I plan very carefully. I can have 20, 30, and 40 pages of outline before I start. Exactly where the plot's going, what's to happen scene by scene by scene, chapter by chapter, why people do what they do, backstory and all the rest of it. I've never yet had writer's block. I completed my first full-length book that actually got published in 1976. But if you want to write, sit down and write. Don't wait for somebody to dictate to you from above, because they're not going to.
This next question, I think I can probably answer. because I believe, Barbara, you're not doing a lot of editing now, are you?